already had some travel plans.
No problem.
How are you? I'm John.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How are you?
Good.
Get on your layers. You can put them all in. Just wait for it.
School bonus?
Yeah, yeah.
You're saying rain.
Has it been to school going good? He's in school.
I don't know how you feel about a standard deviation.
Annoying.
Is that part of the curriculum in law school?
No, we did have one class, environmental.
Stats class, but I have forgotten all of that stuff.
What? But they tell you stats are like the most important thing. 45% of all stats
We're
are
all
made
ready
up
to
on
go.
All right.
You need a gavel to keep Ben quiet? or-
Yeah.
stuff. You need a big
Ben,
one.
it's always you, Ben. Do we need a roll call?
Yep. All right, Patrick Wise. Here. Anna Mulder. Here. Chancellor O'Donnell. Here. And John Cassidy.
Here.
And Nancy Rondell has emailed us and she will not be at today's meeting, so. Oh, and Savannah.
Here.
Here, our student.
Thank you.
Got a quorum.
So has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, there
Any
you go. We'll just read
changes,
them.
corrections, adds?
I just had one thing, so I saw Lewis Hoffman, even though it was David Hoffman that wrote us the check, so I did call him. He would like to be noted as Lewis A. Hoffman for the, whatever promotional material we put out to get that picked up.
Okay, all right. I did send them, as a sign of thank you letters, so I addressed it to David.
Oh, you did good. I was
Yep.
amazed.
So it's Lewis Hoffman in here in the minutes. Is that, do I need to edit the minutes?
I don't think so.
But in
That was
the,
just to jog my memory. Yep.
Is it Lewis A in the minute?
no, it's just Lewis Hoffman in the minutes.
Company is technically called Lewis A. Hoffman.
Okay,
So on the flyer, we'll put Lewis A.
okay.
Thank you. Anything else?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Wait, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Dan Mulder, second by Cassidy.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is approved.
No opposition.
Right. Next on the agenda, Board of Communications. Do we have any?
I do have one thing, and it's also something Lucas can just briefly touch on if I don't get it right, but we're doing a sidewalk project to replace a certain amount of feet of sidewalk between Snyder and Lake Street. So there's a few large deadish silver maples that have to be taken out. So they'll be taken out with that sidewalk project. So we're probably eventually gonna have, are we gonna be able to put trees there, or is it just not enough space?
Potentially, with the new sidewalk going in, it will take up basically the entire right of way. So they would probably be on private property at that point.
So yeah,
So what street are they on? Sorry.
State Street, yeah.
between Lake and Snyder, yeah.
So
On
the west
yeah,
side or
on the
east side?
On the east side, and that's because the sidewalk right now is like 39 inches, and we can't even snow plow it or anything. So we're gonna put in a full-size compliant sidewalk there, and the trees are actually cut right up to the 3-foot one, so they need to come out for that, and they're also in terrible shape, so.
So that's the one thing we got going on.
Do we need to replace those or are they just gonna? be
Well, not at that
replaced
location, not at
later?
that location, probably not. So we'll have to just keep note of it. We're keeping note and probably should, when we have Ben do a little reassessment of our inventory. Because we probably need to do one. It's been a while.
We need to
Update the inventory.
the inventory, but I mean, at this point, with the amount of nutrition that we have, we should probably start looking for other places to plant it. Because we have a lot of infrastructure conflict.
Oh, we do, but one maintenance, we got a lot of things on our yeah.
Can we just fill that with trees?
That's gonna be your new skate park. No. We just joking.
So are we trying to follow the tree ordinance when the city takes out trees on city property?
No, so the tree ordinance is not, the tree policy is not for, so when a city takes out trees, that's a separate matter. We
It's
take
not
out,
one for one.
it's, no, I mean, we ideally like to replace trees when we can, but that's more so from when a private resident takes out a city tree. Now, this city tree is technically our property, so if it interferes in infrastructure, if it's dead, we take it out. You know, we've taken out quite a few dead trees and we haven't necessarily replaced them. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, we probably take out more trees than we can replace on an annual basis. I mean, it's unfortunate, but we just don't have the money right now to replace all those trees. So that's why we're hoping for people to donate.
Right.
The second board communication is right here, and maybe I want to add this to the agenda after Arbor Day Fest really quickly, is I asked Ben to think of some species for planting there when we remove that hedgerow and some species, and maybe Ben can talk about that because Lucas is going to wants to get ready before he gets busy this summer to plant trees there. So if we can add that to item 4 under old business.
Okay.
Very quickly. Thanks.
Is that it?
That's it. That's all I had.
Do we have any public comment? Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Nope. No one's Zoom.
Popular Zoom meeting ever.
It's
Scrolling the airways or anything. All right, so then we'll move on to old business and the implementation matrix review. So last meeting, we went through the implementation matrix and one by one, we ranked each one 1 to 5. And then Victor has taken that and averaged the numbers and came up with a list of priorities.
Based on those numbers, yeah.
Based on those numbers, right.
When we
So,
say average, do we mean mean?
what?
Do we
Okay,
mean
we
mean
got
or
it.
median or
The mean.
mode?
What would you prefer?
Mean, I understand.
All right, so there's,
Causing trouble.
yeah, so there's a separate document where Victor ranked the highest rated goals. And he colored them, so black is city responsibility, green is tree board responsibility. So given that, I think we should take a look at potentially setting deadlines for some of these if possible. Some of them require creating some documents, it looks like. Not all of them. So I think we can look at that now, or we can look at it next meeting and just have a chance to kind of take a look at it in the next meeting in terms of how our timing, with the monthly meetings, how we might want to manage this.
So yeah, I think that's a good idea. There's a couple, like the one that says irrigation and water availability will be considered. That's not something that, that's something that we need to be actively when something comes up to us as a applicant.
Right.
So like the first ones I noticed, create street tree planting guidelines for trees to be planted between sidewalks and streets. Stipulate in the zoning code that all landscaping and screening trees for commercial projects shall be planted in accordance with ANSI standards, which is, we're gonna be doing a zoning code review, upcoming several months. So this might work well to coincide. That's something we should probably put toward the top.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be more of a staff thing?
Well, I mean, we would come up with we'd actually do the grunt work, but it would be a recommendation from the tree board to, let's say, the planning commission and council that we want to adopt an ordinance. Same thing with the fourth green one down there, adopt an ordinance or policy that places limits on the removal of designated or heritage trees.
First, we have to designate them.
Yeah, so that might be a little harder to do at this point. So yeah, and then we are working on the 2 bottom green ones there. The 3 bottom ones. We've been kind of working on those. So I think the ordinance policy one and the street tree planting guidelines are good ones to get through maybe this summer.
But also to consider implementing a plan for adding or improving the tree bases. Isn't that kind of tied into the Main Street
Yeah,
plan?
that's going to tie it in for this, this Main Street plan. So that's something we should also consider. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more like the trees at Shea Park and
We were,
here. Yeah, where
But-
we maybe want to either do like a
Yeah.
corrugated black thing around the trunk or.
So maybe we could do that. add that on as well for the fall. Maybe we can talk about that. We
Okay.
can do the policy stuff in the summertime.
I wonder if we could back up just for a minute too. So Victor, this format that you sent it in, Karen had worked to get things into categories, like where we had, there was a number of projects under tree inventory, then a number of projects under new trees, and then a number under tree maintenance. Would you have any objection to one of us or you going back to that format where we can easily look in a section to see? So they're all kind of
Well,
jumbled back.
The reason
together.
I jumbled it, because I just wanted to show you guys the ranking. See,
Oh.
this is from highest ranking to lowest ranking. And
Okay, gotcha.
this- So you see that the ones are at the top, then it goes to 1.2.
Mhm.
So that's why you won't see those categories in this way, because you couldn't categorize them like that. So we do have that document available. I mean, this was just to show you
Yeah.
what scored the highest and scored the least.
So maybe I could take that and use your ranking that you gave us and put it back into the categorized implementation matrix.
Sure.
And
I mean,
you
all I
use
did
some
was
color to highlight the priority
Yeah.
ones, so it's a little easier to see
You could do
there
that, yeah.
overall.
see how it made these, the topics, the categories made it to the bottom, because you just couldn't.
Right. Yeah.
Excel sheet. So anyway.
So I can work on that
All right.
for the next meeting.
And I think our next meeting though, I'm not gonna bring, so we have these policy, I'm not gonna bring any for our May meeting because we're gonna focus on any Arbor Day stuff that, loose ends that we need to wrap up. So I don't think we wanna overwhelm ourselves with something when we have to focus on Arbor Day. Cause that next meeting is gonna be, take is that,
It's May 20th.
May 20th, yeah, so the week right before, so.
We just want to focus on
That and maybe
I can
nailing
bring
down
every-
some of this implementation stuff, yeah.
Okay, those are two big things.
And who knows what might pop up in between them, so.
Right. All right. Any other comments on the implementation matrix? No. Thanks for putting that together,
Yeah.
Victor. It's really helpful to kind of see
Yeah.
what we need to focus on right off the bat.
Very helpful for the new guy to look at.
Dealing with the people that have been on this board for years, so a learning process.
Yep.
All right, then we can move on to Main Street trees, and I think this is kind of a big one. I did talk to Victor on the phone last week about the history on all of this, where this came from, what we're trying to accomplish. I think this is a pretty, to me, kind of a major project, since it's the first thing people see when they come into town. I know there's an issue with money, like always, but why don't we kind of talk about a little bit more about the background so everybody's kind of on the same page? And then what we need to do right now, and then what we can do, in the near term future.
Yeah, so I'll go over something that maybe Margo can help me because she really worked on this with Benchmark and DPW. But really, so several years ago, on the DDA's plan, one of their TIF plans is downtown plan is to, improve the streetscape of downtown and improve the tree bases. And the mayor a couple years ago had asked the DDA to improve the look of the tree bases. So they began looking into, ways to improve tree bases, look at tree grades, flowers, all a bunch of different things. And they had this plan together, and when we ended up bidding it out, it cost much more than we anticipated it would cost, it cost a lot of money. So we couldn't go through with it. But overall, Benchmark with DDA put together a plan for trees on downtown and kind of standardizing the pits, choosing species that would be appropriate for those locations, making sure that the trees weren't planted locations where they cause interference or would cause the least amount of interference with car doors or sight for at intersections. So what you see, the plan you see before you is really not representative of existing conditions, but representative of what the plan is for it to look like downtown. And as you notice down here in the bottom on each of these pages is a list of species that would be associated with each particular tree spot. So if it's GL, that would be a certain species. If it's, something or another, it'd be a certain species.
And it was vetted through tree board after.
Yes, probably about a year and a half ago. And then, so what it came to my attention now is, there's a couple trees that have already been removed in a couple spots that are, poor locations for trees. One has died 3 times, well, it's 3 trees has died in the same location. Another location, there's interference with the utility, a loading zone. And so Margot came up to me and said, well, we want to concrete these in, so there's no trip hazard or it doesn't look ugly. And that made me think, all right, well, let me just bring this back to the tree board. So we are familiar with the plan that we have and that we are okay with this plan because then we just can concrete it in and understand that there's not going to be a tree in that location, but that we're going to be following this plan for our tree locations and where trees are going to go. And then after I wrote that, Lucas and Margot both reminded me that there's a couple other trees that we need to take out. And one of them was in front of the Schmidt Realtor.
Yeah, in front of Coldwell Bank, that one, 3/4 of the canopy was just dead last year, so that one would need to go.
That one, on here, there's a replacement tree. It's called SL, forget what that was stood for.
Leaf locust or something like
A
that.
skyline locust, yeah. And then the other one was in front of the Pierce dentist office.
Yeah, the old Dr. Pierce's office, that tree's just way too big, so we need to get it out before more sidewalk damage occurs. And so that we still can get it out without lifting the whole sidewalk. There's another one,
Harbor ice cream.
Harbor Ice Cream has one that's lifting the sidewalk and then also in front of American Spoons. That one's getting to be quite sizable as well. It was still healthy last year, but it would be a good one to replace this spring.
So we'd want to replace that one and then one in front of the Coldwell Banker, but the one in front of the Pierce's, it's not shown.
It's not on the new plan.
It's not on
so that
Benchmark's
one
new
wouldn't
plan.
Go back in, because there's 3 trees real tight right there. There's the big maple, another maple, and then I think a locust that's right in front of the Lyric, and they're real tight in that area, so that one would just, since it's not on the new plan, would just go away.
So our dilemma is, at least, is that we still want to go forward with this project, but we don't know if it's going to happen this year, next year, or 3 years. So do we replace those 2 trees that are removing right now, knowing that if we go ahead with this project, we'll have to probably dig them up in order to standardize the pits again? Or do we just say, you know what, maybe this project's not going to go on for another 3 or 4 years, and we'd rather have a tree in there now? And then, remove it, and if it survives, it survives.
Yeah, I think there's a couple factors. I know one thing that we were talking about was, do we really need that many trees downtown? They're really quite close together and there's so much stuff on the sidewalk, maybe the spacing ends up differently, so.
Yeah, the spacing will for surely be adjusted,
Yeah.
especially for this plan, and that's the thing, that we put a $300 tree in the ground and then in a year or 2 years, it's probably not going to transplant well if you have to adjust its location. It may, but
I think it seems to me like it could have, in the landscape trade, we move trees around all the time, they're not established after 2 or 3 years, they may be putting a few little roots through the burlap, but that's about it. So, but there could be mechanical damage or whatever. I guess for my part, I would say, let's replace them.
That's what I was leaning toward, but I wanted to hear you.
Victor, you said a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years, what's the sort of determining factor on just budget?
Budget.
Yeah.
Budget and DDA priority. I know it's been a priority, but it came back like 2.5 times more than we anticipated cost. So, I mean, if Headley passes this year, we probably still wouldn't be able to do it next year from city funds because we still need to save some money up, but probably in 2 years, depending what DDA is at. Mark can maybe speak to that.
So this became a major project for the DDA, and the DDA, its financial stability is continuing to grow. So we're looking both at grants, we're looking at grants also just for an overall entire streetscape, not just for the trees and the grades. But in doing that, we also want to incorporate a more standardized look and also work as Benchmark laid out for us, just with the way that trees are hitting the parked cars and things like that. So, but we do see this still continuing to be a project for the DDA, that we want to keep it on our, we're renewing our plan this year, our funding plan. And we're hoping that we're going to keep it there and maybe in the next few years have enough reserve that we could actually start phasing this project in. the vacant tree spaces, though, the ones that we mentioned, those are the two areas that we would not want to even replace. Those are the ones, the corner at Visions and also the loading dock. And they've been empty for the last 3 years. And Lucas and I have talked quite a bit that those two locations really should not be replaced.
And that meshes with our plan.
Yeah.
That's
And it
showed on-
matches
yeah,
within the plan, the one, the Harbor Ice Cream, the Coldwell Banker, and the American Spoon Food one. If this year, our goal with the DDA is we're gonna go in and we're gonna plant flowers and try to do what we did last year. The problem that we had last year was the flowers weren't getting enough irrigation, enough water. So I met with Lucas and Ben and Victor to try to figure out an irrigation solution that saved the trees because of the bigger priority than flowers, but we still want to put flowers in. So we think we've come up with something, but some of that in that plan does not allow that. Some of the roots are just so big and the trees are so big, we can't plant flowers there. We can't change the irrigation. There's no room. So in those 3 trees, we would come in and just replace it with a smaller street sized scale tree that would be more appropriate for it.
Does that come out of city budget or out of DDA
That would
budget?
come, those replacement of those 3 trees would come out of the DDA. That has already been gone through my board and that's something that they're totally willing to do. So that's.
So it's just the 3 trees we're still talking about here then. Now, the overall project was like $200,000 to do it all, right?
It was closer to 275, and I think with inflation, the way that we're looking, it's probably gonna be around, it's definitely gonna be 300 at least.
Wow. Right. So I know there's the revitalization and placemaking grants that are available. Are we trying to go after some of that money? I
Yes,
mean, okay,
Yeah.
great, because I know there's a lot of money involved in that.
yep,
And I'm sure
That
some of the
sounds like a
big
good fit.
municipalities will get some of that money first, but I think, anything we can get, 100,000, 200, 300, I mean, that would be awesome. I mean, it's probably.
absolutely. But in the
But-
meantime, we're just trying to do what's going to make things look good over the next year or 2 as far as in the downtown and what the trees and the presentation that we want to put out for the public and the tourists and that. And people really responded well to the flowers. But from our standpoint, we ended up last year through DDA volunteers out every other day with the garden cart personally watering, the flowers. And that's just not really a feasible solution for us.
So you're gonna plant some flowers this year? Yeah.
We are, if we can get all of this
Yeah.
worked
Did
out.
you talk to the garden club at all and like, could they adopt those like they do?
They
other-
are not interested. Yes, we've gone
They
through
used
that.
to
quite a
do it
bit.
years ago,
Okay.
and it became overwhelming
Got
for
it.
There's 35 tree beds,
Yeah,
and that's a lot for the garden club to maintain. So we have to try to do it between our volunteers and, last year we used a student group through the high school to
okay.
maintain them and weed and all of that, but so it's kind of a mesh of that, but
Yeah.
yeah, we've looked into a lot of different avenues as far as any of the local planting companies, if they wanted to, but no, people don't really want to take it
It's a
on.
lot of work. Yeah.
So like looking down the road, if LA passes, which I'm sure it's going to. Yeah, is there like interim stuff we can do along the way? Or do we have to do it all at once? I mean, is there any money available where you'd start on some of it now? Or is it just such that you have to do it all at once so it looks?
We've
okay?
talked about that and potentially doing phases, and I think at that time, council didn't want to do it in phases. We had a presentation in phases, so we're not going down the phase approach right now.
Because of how it would look.
Well, I think there's one concern was partly that, but more so also about, could look on half unfinished and the costs are gonna escalate, so if you do it now. So there's a bunch of reasons why they didn't want to do it, but.
When I went back to benchmark with it, in a phased, way, Joe really didn't think it was gonna bring down any of the costs in any way, just because it was, and it could increase and just, it didn't seem like a great way to move forward.
Economies of
Right.
scale to do it all at the same time.
So we were
It will save money by doing it all at once, just because if you look at the unit prices and the line items on any of these bids, you're gonna see something that says traffic control.
It was crazy.
And that's M119, so that
Yeah.
has to be per MDOT standards, which means there'll be signs all the way to the city limit. both directions when this happens, so.
You guys gonna run it, right?
The contractor usually
Yeah.
does, but I think that
Yeah.
line was.
Yeah, that's
it
what
was
it's from. That's like-
It was
$20,000.
it was at least $25,000 for traffic control.
So if you did it in
multiply that
3
three
phases,
times.
it would be 3
Right,
times.
every time.
So, because it's the same amount of signage
Mhm.
for no matter what size project you're doing.
But I think equally as important are the aesthetics of doing it piecemeal.
Right.
It's not gonna look like a complete package.
So, but from how I'm taking from here is though, so far the tree board, I haven't heard Patrick speak or Savannah, but that it's a priority, like this, doing Main Street should be, you know, a high priority for the city DDA. So it's just, we're an advisory board, but
Well, I don't know, would we as an advisory board, say that we will handle fundraising for all of the trees in the project?
that would be. I think that'd be cool. It's not the largest
Great, you know,
expense, but
I think this could be like a joint project, you know, where the tree board pitches in and handles that part of it, and I bet you we could easily, and especially, you know, if we do have the opportunity to look at maybe not quite so many trees. Were we talking about getting rid of 1 or 2 per block or something?
Yeah, because some of them have as many as 8 or 9 on one block, where on the others, even directly across the street, they might have 5 or 6. So it's really an uneven, it's, you know, and there's quite a few.
So that reduces the cost of the project by reducing the number of trees, the sidewalks less cluttered, maybe we can do it sooner. And then that's fewer trees we need to raise.
How many total trees roughly to raise money from?
It was 35,
Well,
but
Okay.
It was 35, but with the cottage coming down, I think we're looking more at like 33.
Okay.
But I mean, and that's if we were to replace exactly what we have. If we were to scale back to what we've
Yeah.
got here standardized, it's gonna come down. I would say probably at least another 6 trees.
The other part of the cost is the utilities, right?
Yes.
yeah.
And that's,
It's utilities and the bases themselves, whatever we choose, whether it's brick or, those two are the bigger
the
costs.
bases and.
But you can't just do the trees before you have to do them, can't do the trees and then, because you'll have to dig the trees back out, so.
well, and then we have a deal with Cottage Company, right, where they're gonna replace X number of trees, right?
And we were gonna talk about that, potentially using those trees, those trees that Cottage is gonna company and maybe use that as a donation for out here. Because they don't have to be replaced back on Main Street. We can choose to put those trees wherever we want to put them,
So
so.
maybe those could be our first trees in the, you know.
It's gonna come from
the tree
one
bank.
pot or the other, and these are gonna happen first though, so that might not happen for a couple of years. That was why we'll bring that up later. But
And this, yeah.
I'm sorry, if I may just chime in a bit, and maybe I need to be brought up to speed a little bit. So I wasn't around when everyone was discussing the tree grades and that was going forward, and I hear everybody's trying to make this, sounds like a balance between the aesthetic of having tree-lined streets and convenience for people to get in and out, and safety, right, with the cement and that sort of thing. What I'm wondering about is it being considered allowing a tree to mature, and to how large a tree to create that nice canopy? I know we've all experienced when you've gone into towns, Traverse City, Front Street is an example, if you can bring that to mind, where you have more mature streets on the street and how that feels to you. Compared to where I notice here in this town, these all seem to be younger trees. And I know the numbers are off and you're trying to even things out. But is there a thought to allowing those trees to mature? You know, when I'm thinking about the grate and that sort of thing, I know they change out, allow so much. And I know with the tree expert guys here, they will say that, once a tree gets so big, then it's troublesome. But I'm just wondering about that because, there's a feel to it. Are these trees only going to be allowed to, how many years? And then, I haven't heard that.
what's the
So I'm
average
curious.
age of the trees on Main, was it like 7 to 10 years
Um,
on Main Street, our Main Street?
yeah, I mean, nationally, it was thought to be 15 years was the average age of a street tree in a city. with more involvement with the USDA grants and tree city standings and stuff like that, I mean, so there's a lot more inventories out there. Those inventories indicate that our average tree is gonna be 30 years. But depending on tree species, they get bigger at different rates. So if we have one that really, like the corner of State and Maine, where that tree's died 3 times in 8 years, well, it doesn't get much bigger, but in front of what used to be Pierce's, that tree's gotten quite large in a very small area. So like, there's a lot of variables that go into the sizing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think from a tree board standpoint, if the goal is to increase city canopy, then we either need to have lots of small trees or some really big, single large trees, and think about, and we've talked about this beforehand, is that our attrition rate is much greater than our replacement rate. I mean, so we're actively talking about it. And some of this is coming to light because 20 years ago, no one really cared where the tree went. We just put it in whatever space we could find it. And, in 30 years, even less than that. Now we have to have distances from signs. We have to have, mandatory signage. We have to have a lot of clearances, and that really means that we have very limited space to where we put the trees. And we have a much better success rate if we can put, the trees that are in that picture in a place like that. If we take them from a paved landscape and put them into an open area where they can express themselves in the ways that trees do, they can get as big as they need to be. We can get a lot more canopy out of a lot fewer dollars invested. So I don't know if I guess the thing I would say is that there really isn't a real steadfast number on how long trees live. Just that when we have less space and more conflict with utilities, that lifespan gets very, very small. So one thing we could add is that if we have a spot that's being used as a tree planting area right now, which is in front of Pierce's, and we don't have a plan to put a tree back there when everything else might be torn up, we put a tree there until that happens, because that may be the lifespan that it has anyway.
Patrick, the tree grates that we were looking at putting in are 48 inches, and then they do have concentric removable circles.
Mhm.
So planting detail is planting the tree a little bit smaller so you don't have that root column buckling up the sidewalk. So I think they would have a potential to get bigger in this scenario than they do right now. What are our average size of those tree holes? They're like,
39 by
Yeah,
39.
they're pretty small.
And I
They're
think,
pretty small.
yeah, and I think the hope with this plan, Patrick, was that, all right, well, we're gonna re-standardize the pits, put the trees in locations where we know they're gonna have least amount of interference as possible, have grates that are flexible, would allow these trees, the new trees that we put in, to eventually, hopefully, have a better chance of returning to maybe 15, 20, 30 years and getting more of that classic streetscape image that these trees that we have there right now are gonna do. Because these ones, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 are gonna get big, the rest are gonna die, get trampled on, get hit, or, so it's just not, I think that's the vision. I think that was the vision of the tree board and the DDA with this new plan. But it is hard. I mean, we have a tighter sidewalk, right, Lucas? Like, we don't have as much
Much
space.
tighter, yeah.
We have much than other cities. Our sidewalk is much more narrower. We have much more going on in our sidewalks than other communities do. So we have a lot less to work with. That's not to be a negative Nancy or Debbie Downer. It's just the reality of the main street there.
Well, that's one of the reasons we see.
So where we go, it's good though, sorry, with Ron Fennick, where he put his trees, we have a lot less interference where we planted those oaks along West Main Street, the white swamp white oak. So hopefully those are gonna give that eventually in 20 years, hopefully if we can continue watering them and keep them alive.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna have to accept the idea that even, I mean, with this project, we're still gonna have a limited lifespan on trees. I mean, every living thing will die, right? And we think about stuff that's in the forest and maybe it lives for 2 centuries. That's just not gonna happen in downtown Harbor Springs. We may get 5 years out of it, or something like that. 10 years would be really nice, but then we have conflict. And I don't think there's anything wrong with cycling those trees out if we can do it. You plant a tree for its usable lifespan. And then when it no longer does what we need it to do, then we replace it with something that's an appropriate size or different species or something like that. And then one thing we see too is that, you know, what was really popular 20 years ago is not as popular now. So we can find some better fits. You know, species that are a little bit more tolerant to our conditions, or you know, and constantly changing what's on Main Street means that we have a little bit more diversity. So we want the, what they call a 10-20-30 rule. So you don't want 10%, you want less than or equal to 10% of your inventory should be of one species. We shouldn't have all just, you know, American elms, because if we get Dutch elm disease, every single tree dies. We don't want 20% to be the same genus. So maybe it's not that it's, you know, if we have red oaks, we have red oaks and white oaks. That would, you know, we want less than 20% to be both, they're the same genus, they're closely related. And then on top of that, we want to have no more than 30% be one particular family. So like right now we're maple heavy, we're probably 30 to 40% maples. So we really resist trying to plant maples if we can. But like if we're constantly changing stuff on Main Street, it gives us more options to put something else there, you know, so we can adjust those numbers.
Well, you said earlier that the tree board had already selected the appropriate trees. So what criteria was used originally to select those trees that would be appropriate? for
Right
Main
tree,
Street?
right place.
Okay.
What was available from
When
bidders to the
we-
project?
When we went back, what was it, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I mean, we did come to the tree board, and that was, these were the species that the tree board recommended for the location and for expense of what was available. But also, in one fear that we have, that I have, you know, as a downtown director, is I go to many cities and the trees become so overgrown, then they get pulled and nothing happens. And we see that there's an empty grate, or it's just been, you know, like a mound of some sort of, you know, covering. And I think Charlevoix is a pretty good example of that. There are a number of empty grates, you know, as you go down the sidewalk. So I think by coming to the tree board when we did and looking at the species and the locations, it was trying to find what was appropriate that was, and it was very clear that there was a limited lifespan on a city street tree.
So diversity, tolerance of salt spray, size, form. What else is on our list?
A lot of it was influenced by what contractors that were bidding the project could get. So,
Yeah, readily available.
yeah, I mean, it's cool if you've got a really obscure species that, but you might not be able to find someone who could actually get it there. And then if you only have one, how do you compare that to how they're doing, you know, are they successful in the city, or is it just, you know, is it just law?
So those trees may, the ones that were designated in the plan may change out based on availability or cost.
Yeah, a good example of that is in the early 2000s, you know, everybody planted green ash. And then within the span of a year, they disappeared because of emerald ash borer. So people were destroying their inventories, so they weren't available. But you can get elm trees again.
So I guess, I mean, really at this point, really, we have 3 trees and DDA said they'll be able to pay for those replacement of those trees.
Do you want a motion?
No, I think I just want to put this on our radar that we have this, you know, this plan out there and that things are happening on Main Street. But we just need to be cognizant of the fact that we have this plan. And I wanted the tree board to think if there's something that they wanted to, we explore this plan, but they're still comfortable with what we have as this plan.
So Victor, how many trees, aside from what the DDA is gonna pay for, how many need to be funded? Not to fulfill all this, but just to fill in the areas that are gonna be removed?
No, those 3 are what the
That's
DDA,
it?
yeah, the 3 is what, 2 of them aren't gonna be replaced because they haven't been replaced in 3 years in their bad locations, so there's 3.
Do we want to
Well,
have
Victor,
a,
are we replacing Pierce's or not?
No, that's what that was our recommendation, was not to replace Pierce's.
So there'd be- And then the 2 vacant spots.
Well, thank you for all the information. I didn't mean to take up so much
No,
time
no.
on that, but
Oh, it's helpful.
it sounds like the overall attitude then is that none of these trees on Main Street anyways will mature very long before.
Probably not.
Right, okay, so that seems to have been,
And as,
decision
I
made.
think what, from our standpoint, from the DDA, with these 3 trees that are going to be replaced, I think we're fine with just giving you the money, the donation for the trees, and letting you select what's going to be appropriate, you know, in that place in the street, in those street spaces.
How soon do we need to decide that?
Right now.
Can we do that at the next meeting?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
We can do that at the next meeting, probably, maybe.
If we put trees?
Pick a
I
few.
was, with the trees we were planning to remove and then replant, I was just gonna follow this proposed plan. If the species were already selected, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna do.
That makes sense.
I agree with
to me.
that, yeah.
Let's just do
Let's
it.
just do that, yeah.
Sure.
Do we want to vote or have any resolution on tree board helping with
I think that'd be a good
supplying
idea.
the trees? Do you want to do that
Or for the
today?
fund, for fundraising, that maybe,
fundraising?
yeah, in the future when we go, yeah, I think that's a good idea, just to, so the tree board
Do we
will.
want to make a motion, make sure everybody agrees?
Well, I would just like to say one thing. There's a lot of talk about different fundraisers that are going to be happening around here. You know, with Boardwalk, you know, hopefully we get grant money. That would solve a lot of the problem if we get any of that money. But I'm kind of wondering about competing against each other for funds. Is there a way to do an umbrella that would service different issues that, you know, needs for the city itself?
Well,
overall?
you know, I don't think that raising trees are, you know, people like to donate to different things. So someone might be willing to donate for like a tree, but it's not gonna donate to the skate park or the boardwalk. I mean, so I think you can target different people, like, you know, Ron Fennick obviously donated $15,000 worth of trees, you know. I don't know if he's donated for the boardwalk or, you know what I'm saying? So there's
For
people that
downtown
are,
businesses.
right, you
might
know,
want to donate.
yeah, so you can have a targeted fundraising campaign for trees, and we have already the donation form set up. All we need to do is maybe go out, like you said, Dan, and go to the businesses and be like, hey, we're raising money for trees. And yeah,
Would you care to pay for the one that'll be in front of
Yes,
your
They'll
store?
they'll get their
I like
name.
it 'cause it's very tangible, and people can say, hey, I paid for that tree.
they get their name on the
And they might
plaque
actually
outside.
help water it too. Yeah.
Ruth the baby.
That's a really good idea, though. I like that.
But there's the additional cost to utilities, you know, the whole plan cost is pretty huge.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not just about the trees.
So this,
So that's the other part that, you
Yeah.
know, we have to get money.
no,
But
they
we
will,
don't have to.
no.
We would
they'll do
just
that.
do the trees. They would raise money for everything else.
That's a DDA project that's in the works.
So can we say with the Donate the Trees program that we set up, that right now we're gonna focus on Main Street and make that a priority in terms of where that money gets used?
Yeah, we could do that.
Trees?
When they save it up in a bank and, you know, when that project goes
Do we
through.
have some trees in the bank right now or?
We have one at Layton that was meant to be for Layton Park that someone didn't want, so. So what
Actually,
species was?
there's somebody that might want it. We had somebody that volunteered a spot,
Oh, someone that volunteered at Layton Park?
Yeah.
Okay,
so we can put it there. There we have a copper beach.
Copper Beach, okay. Well, anyway, yeah, we probably should get moving on to the next topic, so if you guys wanna put a motion together.
For their planning purposes, though, do you think we can agree that? Yes.
Thank you. That's great.
Sure. Good idea. All right, is that enough in Main Street?
Yeah, I
right
think
now?
so for now.
Well, it's a big project. Okay, Arbor Day Fest, next one.
All right, really
Right along
quick,
here.
really quick, I just broke down on what was kind of accomplished. Thank you, Dana, for getting the sponsors for Johansson's and USA Hoffman. And I know Karen, you were talking with the IGA, so thank you for that. Rachel got the health license, so that's all set. The pine trees have been ordered. I don't think they're supposed to come till like early May, so Ben will let us know when he receives them. We've solidified our schedule and events, so that's all set. We have the flags, DPW has a Mystic flag that they can provide us for
Yeah. I'm gonna suggest that we nix the flags and if they're looking to find a way back to their project, that they find something, a natural landmark or something like that, because it sort of moves in the opposite of direction.
That's fine, yeah, that's a good idea.
Is
Yeah,
that okay?
that's It's totally fine with me. It's a better idea. Task in progress, a banner sign. So I've working with the company, it was Deca Digital, is that Deca Digital? Yeah, working with them to create a banner. I'll share that with Patrick and to trying to get the design together. They're the ones that are put the design together, but I'll first send an email over to Patrick to see if he has any suggestions, and then I'll send a final copy to everyone to see if everyone's okay with that.
So Victor, back to, are we gonna try and have like a similar look for all of our materials then?
Well, the banner that we have out there, I don't know if it's gonna be similar. So, I mean, the banner that we have at entrance in the town, we're not gonna use the Arbor Day logo on that. We're not, I'll see what design they provide us. I mean, but,
What's your thoughts on why we wouldn't wanna have it with a similar look?
well, because I don't know what they're gonna use, and I don't know if they're gonna be able to use the images we provide them. So I don't know what they're gonna use on their banner that they provide us.
Can't we tell them that what we want?
We can, but I don't think, are we gonna spend the time designing that?
No, you could just say, I want this image, or,
But I'm not sure we want to put Arbor Day's image on that flag. I've asked for permission to use it on our promotional material. What if one day we're not certified City Tree USA, and then we can't use that banner because their logo's on it?
Well,
I mean, they sent me an email saying that that's the reason.
I agree with what Dana's talking about. And I think this is a project we need to look at for the very near future, and that really, what is our look, what is our identifier, what's our brand? So that when somebody sees anything related to tree board, they know it's something that we're, tree board, we got the Tree City designation, now we're gonna do Arbor Day, like, we're doing the event at Kiwanis, but it's in collaboration with Parks and Rec Department, so they need to have their identifier, but I think whatever we can do to stay as consistent as possible, maybe it's using the tree that we use in
We can.
the articles in the Harbor Light, that it says tree advisory board underneath that, or it's just something as simple as that, where we're not reinventing the wheel, but just again, I suppose we have to have Arbor Day on that banner, or is whatever we're doing for Arbor Day, is that required to be designated as an Arbor Day? Is that something we have to do?
I don't know. I guess I would disagree with us having a logo. I mean, the planning commission doesn't have a logo. Parks doesn't have a logo.
But it's an identifier,
Then you'd be cool.
just an identifier.
I mean, using the tree that Patrick kind of helped create that Patrick did create, that would be, I don't mind using.
I think we
Can
could
you
use
like
that.
repurpose a tab can from the 80s?
So, I mean, if Patrick's fine with that, yeah.
I guess
mean,
what, I just worry about with that is, I don't know, for some reason, I just don't like to see every time that's used with your credit on it, and that's with all due respect. I know it's kind of a different thing.
Well, and but Dana, that's the same thing with all the images you provided with me and the Arbor Day thing, they're all copyright subject, and I have not received permission from anyone except the Arbor Day Fest. So for us to find an image and search and scour for images and say, hey, use this.
There's a ton of free, all you have to do is Google free images and you get a ton of stuff.
I've Googled several free images and I don't know what's gonna look good. So that's why I was just gonna hand it over to Deca Digital, design something for us. If we like it, let's go with it. I mean, it's, unless you guys wanna spend the
So
time
then we have
designing it.
different graphics on that and different graphics on the flyer. And I don't know.
Yeah.
But if we could add the tree to it and all of those, Patrick's tree, as we call it, at least, they recognize that from the 4 articles we put in the Harbor Light, or 3 articles, whatever it's been so far. Just something that calls it out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't agree, but if everybody else does, then.
I'd rather use Patrick's tree.
I'm not up to speed enough to agree or disagree. so.
Nice neutral.
I'll abstain for the moment. I want to see Patrick's tree though.
Let's see if
Yeah.
Well,
The one other thing I'd say, Victor, is, do we need to close out on that?
Yeah, I don't know where we are right now. So what flyer are we gonna use? Because you had one that you wanted to use, and then there's
the one that you
I-
provided with me, the bottom 3 pictures are no good. I need new pictures in order to be able to put that one out there.
Yes, this is what sits in the top of the article we're going. We're gonna do one.
By no good, I mean, I don't have copyright permission to use them. I've emailed the people and they've not responded to me. So,
Well, maybe it's too late right now, but going forward, I think we really need to kind of focus on making sure there's a similar look, even Stefan of, the the poster or whatever, the people will look at it and say, oh yeah, I remember seeing that tree in the harbor light, every month, and oh, they're doing this now, and because we're gonna keep doing events, we hope, as part of fundraising.
I think it's a good idea to use that. I know, Dan, I understand your concern about the copyright, but that's actually typical for most. Even the Arbor Day in their banner has a copyright thing on there, so, or a little thing, so. It's just the way it is.
So we try to do that with whatever we end up with a poster. I think we're kind of far into it enough that we probably can't make major changes except deciding which way we're gonna go with the poster, whether what Victor created or what you were working on.
I don't want to have to use what I created. I got the time to go back and redesign stuff. So that's why I was going to use what I did last year. But if you can find more photos that are in the public domain, replace the 3 ones that are at the bottom of
I'll have a
there.
look at that.
Yeah, and then, because Arbor Day did give us permission to use their thing while we're their partner. So, or it's Tree City USA.
So then are we saying we're taking that off the flyer and putting Patrick's tree on the
No,
flyer?
I don't. It's just, I was gonna think about using Patrick's for the banner that we're gonna have an entrance to town as part of it. And then maybe going forward next year, we can look at that, but I just don't have the time right now I'm not a design person, I coordinate, that kind of stuff. So,
You're multi-talented, maybe you could do it.
no, I don't got the time for that. All right, but what's going on? So I'll be in touch with the banner. Marketing pamphlet, that's what we're working on, the flyer. Dana got to us with the placards for tree identification. She emailed some options. I think those are good ideas.
So that we have to decide one or the other. So I don't know if you can quickly put it up, or I have a pic, I did print it out. Let's see. So the kind of 2 choices then, how much information to put on the placards. A really simple one would be, let's say, Northern Red Oak, scientific name Quercus rubra, family, each family, origin, Northeast US, Southeast Canada. And then at the bottom would be Harbor Springs City logo, and then a QR code that would take them straight to the Arbor Day Foundation page for Northern Red Oak.
And it would look like this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, like, for example, on this, I don't think we want the city logo plus Patrick's tree plus the QR code.
We wouldn't need a tree on this.
Yeah.
This is going to be for tree identification. I don't even know if we necessarily need we could put the logo. That's fine. Yeah.
Let's see, then the other option that I saw that I kind of like better, how many people are really going to do the QR code thing? And this would be the example, and this is sugar maple, Acer saccharum, and then 4 bullet points: tall, oval, rounded shade tree reaching 60 to 70, excellent yellow, orange, red fall color, pairs of seeds known as samaras, mature in October, produces a sweet sap that runs in the spring known as maple syrup.
I personally would rather have that with more information on the
Yes.
placard,
Yes,
because more
And
people are
then
like.
just leave the QR code off.
very few people will click on the QR
I
code.
think so too.
And that way you actually,
Okay.
it's way more meaningful to know 4 things about it than.
Yeah.
There's a cost for it.
These aren't gonna be, these aren't gonna be.
I've got to find
Dan,
out. So
but
this
if
is one
you say
less
that-
image, but
Oh.
more
You
text.
can get sap from this tree.
People already, anyone who wants that will know that it's not that simple. You need about 40 gallons of it. before-
Patrick, you think the first one or the second?
I think, yeah, go with the first, yeah. That's my vote.
So it looks like this is, discussing with them, we're gonna do stakes instead of screwing them to the trees.
Yes.
And so they're 20-inch stakes, and then there's adhesive that puts them, it goes up like this and this, so then I guess that could fail at some point, but then we Gorilla Glue them. So we need to know like how many, so I could do 10, there's 10 different species that I counted at least there, or we could just start with fewer.
Well, they're 10 for 10 is $100, but what is this? I just want to know what the setup charge entails.
So that's what I have to find out is, so they say
35
that
to
everyone is
350.
the same format, you're just changing the information. And it's $35, or does that 35 apply for each sign? So that's what I still have to find out.
I shouldn't apply for each sign if it's $10 for the plaque. So
Yeah, that's fine.
that would not make sense,
Seems
but
like 35.
if it's,
So let's say it's $20 for each sign, and that would be include the setup charge, the stake, or let's even say 25.
so we have that money with the sponsorship money.
Okay,
Because we had, was it 250 for the trees or so, the seedlings, about 350 for the banner. We still have $400 left over, so 200 there, some for the food. I
Okay.
think we're fine.
well, should I get an order firmed up and then
Yeah, send it
send it
to,
over to you?
and Rachel, because I might not be here much next week, so. So yeah, I think we're good on that. So thank you,
So
Dan.
I did have a question kind of related to that. We plan to use the markers in part for like a scavenger hunt, like people going out, kids going out trying to find those trees on a list. Like we'll go try to find this tree and see if they, they'll learn something with that. The other thing we talked about were trail markers to mark trails and actually leading people on hikes on the trails during that time. Because there's an extensive network of trails back there. It's really pretty remarkable how much there is.
It is.
So, yeah.
Where are you talking about?
Kiwanis Park,
Okay.
yeah. So does the city have trail markers?
I don't know, you might, Rachel will have to leave, but maybe you can, after the meeting or next week, get together with her to see, because I don't know what she may be able to find them, and maybe you guys can do that.
I used to have somebody.
Yeah, I would connect with Rachel about that. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good
And
idea.
I also just wanted to say that we are all set with Farmers Market to have a booth.
Oh, good. All right,
And
that's
I
not
think Mark Rendell and Bill are gonna be in it.
okay, so we can cross that off. Signs for nature art. Well, Patrick did provide me with a bunch of material for the nature art stuff, so thank you, Patrick, and it's good, the instructions and everything. He has all that. I have it laminated, so that's all set. I'm still gonna create signs for each of the stations and tables. Those are just gonna be simple nature art station, climbing with Ben Vealing, the arborist.
So Patrick, is this, then they're supposed to pick up things in the woods and bring it back up to the warming hut to make something?
No, they make it where they're at.
Okay,
And at location, and then that's why we were originally gonna put the flags, as Patrick had originally thought, maybe put some kind of flags, so they know where their creation is, but now Patrick says that's probably much more better to use some kind of natural identifier. So maybe a big stone they'll pick up and they can know that that's theirs.
I
So,
did just read an article about, like in national parks, you're not allowed to take stones anymore or anything like that.
it's our
And then I
part.
was also reading about like clearing a forest floor isn't a good thing either, so I think to leave it, all that stuff out there is good.
And we're collecting toilet paper rolls for the brick feeders.
Yes, yeah, and I've given Rachel plenty, so if you have any toilet roll empty ones, not full
Yeah, I've been-
ones, we're not gonna TP people's houses.
Yeah.
And so then
That's what we
Savannah,
do.
have you managed to talk to anyone at the school about artwork?
So last meeting, like right after it, I went to the elementary to talk to the teacher that teaches art, and he wasn't there, so I left a note kind of telling him about Arbor Fest and what he could do to help with the kids making art. And with my contact information, he just never got back with me. So the other day I went to the high school art teacher and told her about it, and she's on board with it. She's getting her kids like 7th through 12th grade to all do this nature pictures. And I think she's gonna be done with it, and they're all gonna be collected sometime next week.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
So then we have to think of a means for attaching them,
Yeah.
Well,
you know.
we can get with Rachel with that, what she want. Obviously, you help.
He said no more holes in the walls.
Well, we're not gonna do holes, but we'll find a way to put them out
With the
somehow.
double stick, real thick,
Yeah,
foam tape that you can use.
3M stuff.
Yeah.
we'll find a way. Well, thank you. That's awesome. So
Yeah, that's
looking
great.
forward to that.
Savannah.
All right, so then the three things really that I'm gonna do, I mentioned the science for station, you can just print out those tree forms, again, that's easy, but the liability for adults tree climbing, so I'll get that liability form, so we're almost there,
Do we have a sign on the back of the chipper?
so. Yeah. All right, I
Is
guess,
there, is there any of the tasks that need help? Because I was not here, so I didn't
Yeah,
get
it's true.
signed up, so if there's, I'll put the offer out there if there's anything. And if there's not, that's totally fine.
maybe we can use you as a floater on that day. if you're here.
You can be a tree
Yeah.
climber.
I cannot be a tree climber, that is for sure.
Right.
Be more than welcome, John.
Really quickly, we need to go.
Man
on
my
to-
table as well. I'll be around, but if you want to join in.
Okay.
Man the table, I'll just be standing there trying to guide and be.
Cool.
Karen, really quickly, if we can get to that item 4 that we added, which was out there, the hedgerow placement trees.
Mhm.
Lucas wants to get out there and right now it's a little slower for them before his guys get busy. And it's a good time to plant trees in the coming up few weeks. So he wants to get out there and plant some trees there. So I asked Ben to look at, 2 or 3 trees, which where the hedges were located. Do we go with what we had, the existing type of trees, and just carry that same species along? Or what do we do? So I asked Ben to look at it. So Ben,
So we have, this park is all maple.
Yeah.
Except for, which, as I said earlier, we want to stay away from that if we can. On the other hand, it is probably the best place we have to put maples because we have space. But we have a lot of maple species, so we're above 10% in our species component, in our genus component, and in our
family.
component. Like, we could stay away from that. Do we want to follow with what is going on? Like right now we've got, it looks like there's a few autumn blazes in Norway or 2.
I think we should talk about what is our goal? Are we
Is the
trying
goal
to
to block the parking
screen the parking
No,
lot?
well, we're not gonna screen it. We're not gonna be able to screen it the way we had it screened with a hedge. And that's just not gonna be feasible.
And the hedge is supposed to mirror or complement the ones on the other
They're
side.
supposed to complement the one on the other side, and it just doesn't do a job. What we wanna do is at least just break up, we're just gonna break it up a little bit, so there's not a straight vision.
They're gonna be on that side of the
No, they'll be on
drive?
this side of the.
This side of the
Yeah.
drive? Oh, I see where you're saying continue it along there,
Yeah.
yeah.
There used to be a cedar hedge there.
No, I remember it. I walk by there every day, so
So
I
are
came
we
out.
sure we don't want to screen that
No, I-
because there's all
Well, I've
sorts of
already decided-
construction stuff and all that
I
kind
already
of stuff.
decided with Lucas, we're not gonna put screening back there. We're gonna put some trees back there. We've already talked about this at tree board a few times. We're not gonna screen it. We're gonna just put trees there. So, it's really about figuring out which trees we wanna put there.
Well, you need to know right away.
Lucas wants a plant, yeah.
Yesterday.
But we put a tulip tree in down at the other end. What else would be different and interesting?
Any of the stuff that's on we could plant any of the elm varieties,
Yeah, I
but
was
they would
gonna
not
say-
follow the same forms that you have there, right? So this kind of cotton candy swirly thing that you get from a maple, we wouldn't get from an elm. Elms are base shape,
Right.
which is cool. But it would look significantly different.
Swamp white oak.
You could put swamp white oak, we're approaching, we could put other flavors of oak. It'd be a good place to put a red oaks could
Yeah, I
grow
like
quickly
that.
there.
Yeah.
They would have a similar shape. They wouldn't hold their leaves like the swamp whites would, so they would lose leaves. They would have a fall color that would be a little different.
How many are we hoping to do?
4.
3 or 4, well, 2 to 4 depends.
What if we did a skyline locust? It'd be similar-ish in shape, more so than an elm.
Yeah. Probably would see the red oaks take off and then the locust would just kind of, like if we want to do that, maybe we should put the locust on the far south. So that this line of
It
trees
steps
goes,
down, yeah.
yeah. Instead of going, people are gonna go and after that.
The runt.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the red oaks.
Red oak, but maybe.
Start with the skyline and then red
And see how
oaks.
many, and ask Lucas how many we can.
Although
fit in.
we do have, I think we think of an alternate for,
Then we do a red maple.
like a red point.
You do a red point, or I was thinking like red sunset or something.
And that gets us back to acers. We probably have fewer locusts than we have linden. No.
Linden, how about linden?
we
Little leaf
plant
linden.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head what we have a lot of. We have a lot of maple, we have a fair number of lindens.
I like the idea of red oaks,
Yeah,
3 or 4.
Yeah, do a
Well,
skyline.
I think we were gonna try and not do monocultures anymore, though, right?
yeah, we had a long discussion about monoculture in front of the church, just because that was the look of the donation, and so we should probably try to not have monocultures in other places where we have. Trees for free is great, And then, but then we have to kind of pay for it someplace else.
Then the skyline, a red oak, and then,
If you put a linden in there, then we've got everything we talked about, got our
Okay.
diversity goals, we haven't added anything. Really
let's do that.
toward-
Let's do those three. Skyline, red oak. Is that okay? And,
Yeah, or we could do two red oaks, a linden and a skyline.
let's see how much space there is, but we're gonna do three for sure. Skyline, a red oak, and a linden. And then maybe you can coordinate with Lucas to get those trees. But if you can buy them or we can, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's all stuff we could probably find at.
Okay, can you do that?
Yeah,
Okay,
it'll be in the middle of the night,
that's fine.
so David's not with.
That's all I
Is that
have.
good?
That's all I have. Thanks.
Anything else? Ran a little over, I'm sorry.
All right, sorry.
7 months over.
Oh, overtime.
Yeah, there you go.
What's 1.5 times 0?
A motion to adjourn. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Dan, I wanted to say something.
Oh, I just was gonna say, are we gonna talk any more about the replacement trees for 119 by Bay Bluffs, or that's further down the road? We could talk.
We can talk about that later. Lucas is gonna put that out to bid first and for the removal. And then once he gets a package together, then I can bring it to you guys for probably in June.
Anything else? Okay,
And Kieran and I are gonna bring our canopies to Arbor Day.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Great.
yeah. And we're gonna walk the trails some more, mark the trails, figure out the details that way.